This is the Extreme Stewardship Podcast, where we explore anything and everything that gets us better at making things good and good at making things better. Right now, I'm particularly interested in getting better at this thing we call leadership. In this second episode on that topic, I have committed myself to the impossible task of saying something about humility without being a total hypocrite. I hate talking about humility. We really shouldn't talk about things we aren't good at, and you can't exactly promote yourself as an exemplar of humility without cutting off the branch on which you stand. So I hope you can hear what I'm going to say as a bunch of things that I believe to be true about humility without hearing me suggest that I know all of this because I consistently do all of this. And with that hopefully useful caveat, here are a bunch of things that come to mind when I think about a humble leader. First, humble leaders are more interested in listening than talking. I was at a pastor's conference some years ago, and a group of us who were speaking at the conference were hanging out, and we weren't having a conversation, we were having a competition. All of us, like dogs going after a bone, trying desperately to be the loudest voice in the room. It was pitiful, it was sad, it was bizarre, and I was just as much a part of it as any of them. You might not have seen that if you'd been there, but that's just because I was losing the competition. I was still playing that game, I just wasn't playing it very well. I was getting schooled on being a successful egomaniac. Now you know what happens in those situations, in those cultures where one or more people think that because they are the leader, they should always be the loudest person in the room. Those leaders never learn anything because they never listen, so they never get better at anything. Those teams aren't really teams because they're either one ego surrounded by sycophants, or they're just a bunch of fragmented individuals each trying to get their piece of the pie, and no one is ever willing to grant the stage to someone else. And the best people in the group are eventually going to give up and leave. They're going to look for a place where their voices are heard and respected, where people listen to each other, where the team actually works as a team. So if you and I want to be humble leaders, we are going to have to learn how to listen, really listen to the people that we are trying to lead. Second, humble leaders are willing to receive criticism and act on it. This one isn't complicated. When someone comes after me and I get defensive, that's my ego. When criticism is directed at me and I go either into self-defense or full-blown offense, that's pride. Well, that's not my fault. You don't understand. What about her? Don't question me. That's not how humble leaders respond to criticism. Here's a tension we all experience. On the one hand, in order to give criticism, we have to build trust first. Relational equity is everything when it comes to negative feedback. If I don't trust you, I don't listen to you. If you don't trust me, you don't listen to me. I've been called out on stuff by people I didn't trust. They were right. It didn't matter. I didn't hear them because I didn't trust them. Now that's the tension. In order to receive criticism, we shouldn't need the other person to build that bridge. We should have the humility to accept criticism from whatever source, delivered however poorly. The only question that matters should be, are they right? And even if they aren't right, I should still ask the question, what led them to that perspective? Why are they thinking something about me that isn't accurate? And how, if the relationship calls for it, should I correct their perception of me or of what I'm doing? So that's the tension. To give criticism, I have to build trust. But to receive it, I should try not to require the other person to build trust. I heard someone say recently, they don't listen to me, therefore I don't trust them. But it's really the opposite. They don't listen to me, therefore they must not trust me. When I say, I don't trust them, I'm suggesting there's something wrong with them. They are untrustworthy for whatever reasons. But when I say they don't trust me, now I'm flipping things around. Now I'm inviting the question, why do they perceive me as untrustworthy? what have I done? What impression have I given? What mistakes have I made that would lead them to see me that way? And what can I do to change their perception? How can I be more trustworthy, and how can I better communicate my trustworthiness? Here's another difficulty when it comes to giving and receiving criticism. Not long ago, I gave some criticism. It wasn't well received. I was right, they were wrong. So they were wrong, and they were wrong not to hear that they were wrong. But I made some mistakes in how I gave the criticism. One piece of that criticism was unjustified. My approach was too aggressive. I didn't have some information that I should have gotten ahead of time, so I blew it. And the frustrating and necessary reality is that I needed to apologize to the person I was criticizing for those failures on my part. I had to own my part of the problem. It didn't matter if, objectively speaking, my part of the problem was 5% or 95% of the problem. I have to own whatever part that is and recognize that in handling the situation the way that I did, I make it harder for the other person to own their part. So whose fault is it that they didn't come clean? Well, in part, it was my fault. Third thing about humility. Humble leaders see in themselves a never-ending need for growth. We never arrive, we never finish, we never coast, we never stop getting better at making things good and good at making things better. I really hope that 20 years from now, the children of some of my current students are enrolled in my classes. And I hope those parents, my current students, I hope they come back 20 years from now to visit. And I hope they sit in on my class, and I hope they think, wow, I do not remember this class being this good. And by this good, I don't mean this entertaining or this conducive to my particular learning style. I mean this effective for the education and transformation of the students in the room. And I hope this because however good or bad or mediocre my teaching is this year, it ought to be significantly better than that 2 decades from now. We really shouldn't be obsessed with doing things perfectly. That's not going to happen anyway. We should be obsessed with doing things better. Fourth, humble leaders do whatever job needs to be done, regardless of title or position. How surprised would you be if you walked into a room and saw the executive leadership of your organization mopping the floor and taking out the trash? How surprised would your subordinates be if they caught you doing that? Of course, there's a tension here. Leaders need to do the things that only they can do, and they need to empower others to do absolutely everything else. Sometimes it's appropriate that the janitorial team cleans the executive suite while the CEO sits in a budget meeting down the hall. So I'm not talking about erasing all the job descriptions and everyone just doing whatever looks like it needs doing. But I am talking about a willingness to do things that need to be done, even if they technically belong to someone below us on the org chart. Fifth, one of my students coined a phrase, at least I think he did. I Googled it and couldn't find it attributed to anyone else. The phrase is positional gratification. Positional gratification is getting an ego boost over a promotion. It's making your work about titles and positions and ranks and using those things to create a leadership facade. I must know better than you because I outrank you, and they wouldn't have given me a higher rank than you if I wasn't better than you. Quick aside here about how this works in the church. Nothing makes me want to pull my hair out more than hearing pastors talk about moving up the ranks from youth pastor to associate pastor to senior pastor or whatever the equivalent verbiage is in various churches. There are so many things wrong with this way of thinking, like the idea that any idiot with some Bible college can shepherd middle schoolers, but it takes a real man of God to stand behind a pulpit. Come on. In this context, I see the foundational problem as thinking of leadership as a ladder to be climbed. The goal is more. The goal is bigger. The goal is to increase the extent of our leadership. This is not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that the goal is to increase the effectiveness of our leadership. Get better at improving creation more, not get better at improving more creation. one transformed junior hire is worth 100 mediocre sermons. So humble leaders seek increased effectiveness in their leadership, not increased platforms for their leadership. Sixth, Patrick Lencioni talks frequently about humility in a way that really bugs me. I'm sorry I can't quote him exactly because it's a point he makes all the time in different places, but it goes something like this. Humble leaders are willing to take the hit that comes with doing unpopular things. Make a decision, any decision, and someone won't like it. Someone won't like you. Lencioni is not talking about going with your gut and ignoring everyone else's input and doing what you know is right contrary to all those lesser mortals out there. He's talking more narrowly about confrontation. He's talking about taking the risk of saying something true to someone, knowing they might not handle it well, because by might not handle it well, we really mean might get mad at us, and we're uncomfortable with that, because my ego wants everyone to like me. So rather than let my ego get stepped on, I'll pass on an opportunity to lead. I'll avoid giving someone else an opportunity to improve. So humble leaders are willing to confront for the benefit of the other person, even if doing so comes at a cost to them. Seventh and last, here's a great line from Matthew Barzan in an interview with Simon Sinek. Leaders don't share power, they create power. Yeah. Leaders don't share power because sharing sounds like it's theirs, and sometimes they take what's theirs and distribute bits and pieces to others, like a kid sharing her bag of candy, or they let someone else sit in their seat for a little while before taking it back, like a kid letting someone else play with his toys for a few minutes. It's mine, but you can have some. You can have it for a little while. Leaders don't do this. Leaders don't share power. Leaders create power. Is that too close to what God does? Have we messed up the analogy by saying it like this? I don't think so. I think we are creative beings even as we are created beings. So I think that language is okay as long as we don't mean create in a vacuum or create out of nothing like God does. But I think create is the right word because to be led by a humble leader is to be empowered. It is to find in oneself something that wasn't there before, a sense of ability and responsibility and enablement and encouragement to accomplish something. And we have to be humble leaders to do this because my ego tells me to do the task myself. That if it's going to be done right, I have to be the one who does it. That empowering someone else to do that task means I miss out on an opportunity to show what I can do. My ego wants to protect my place at the table. But to be a humble leader, the absolute best thing I can do is empower someone else to take that place. Now, if you take my 7 points here as useful descriptions of a humble leader, I have to admit I'm not very humble. I struggle with all 7 of these things all the time. But I want to get better. I want to get more humble. And I think one of the ways we can progress on a journey like that is to have some bedrock truths that we keep in mind, some basic things that we confess over and over and over to keep us headed in the right direction. So in the next episode, I'll share some of those things that have been helpful for me as I pursue humility. Thanks for listening to the Extreme Stewardship Podcast. My name is Michael Kibbe, and I teach Bible and theology at Great Northern University in Spokane, Washington. My behind-the-scenes partner in this project is my brother, Ben Kibbe. Our editor-in-chief is Annalise Stockton. Art comes from Leah Leanhoutz, and of course, music is provided by Dave Murray of Daradoon Guitars. If this series has been helpful or challenging to you, or if you've got a story about extreme stewardship that you'd be willing to share, shoot us an email, extremestewards@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. You are, of course, welcome to like and subscribe and tell your friends and all that. What we really care about is that you have gotten better at making things good and good at making things better.